Welcome to Issues That Matter. I'm Cynthia Pooler. My guest today is Chris Coolum, and Chris is running in the 2nd District of California for Congress. And we're going to talk about the migrant crisis. So, Chris, how bad is the crisis you're in Northern California? What's it like up there?
Well, again, we're on the far side of the state, so we haven't seen too much of a direct impact, but we are experiencing a bit of, we're experiencing some issues with law enforcement because of oftentimes the immigrants are either coming in to support the cartels or they're forced into supporting cartels. And here in California, we've got a pretty big drug production problem, which I believe is partly fed by much of the unchecked immigration that comes into California. So we don't necessarily see it on our streets in, say, the north coast of California as much as we see it in, say, San Francisco or Oakland, LA, San Diego. But we do have very direct impacts to the or from the immigration process and immigration crisis that's happening here.
How long has this been going on?
I I came back from the military in 2016 and was pretty deep in small business for a few years. But after 2020, it became pretty apparent that there was a very big cartel issue that was happening, particularly in Northern California. Several of our sheriffs have articulated the issues and the lack of support from the state and federal government as far as addressing much of the cartel presence here in this region.
When you talk to your constituents, do they talk about the cartels or do they just talk about immigration as a whole?
I'd say in large, they talk about immigration as a whole. I think most of them are concerned about the increasing financial burden to the state of California. And I know that the majority of the people that I speak to have a great deal of questions about why it is that the state of California is contemplating or putting forward legislation that would create great benefit to those that are here incorrectly and illegally. As far as getting a home, there was a bill that just got vetoed by the governor, but made it through the California legislature, which would have given illegal immigrants a $150,000 down payment for their home. And so the taxpayers would be funding the down payment for illegal immigrants to purchase a home, which is an option that most Californians don't have at this point in their lives and at this point in our economy. So there's a lot of, I think, policy concerns by Californians about what is happening with our immigration process. Why is it that we are incentivizing so many of these people seeking safety and refuge? Why are we creating basically a big advertising program to draw them here, as opposed to addressing the needs of the citizens? So that's been a major conversation. And then those that are in kind of the inner circles of the region definitely have conversations about the cartels, but I wouldn't say it's as prolific as the immigration crisis.
How much money, in your estimation, is being spent on illegal migrants in your state? It's got to be a lot of money.
It, so the numbers that have been put out publicly are roughly $24 billion that the state of California has spent to address homelessness. I don't know if anybody knows how much has been spent on addressing the immigration crisis here. And I suspect that most people have a very low level of confidence in the number that the state of California would give us.
So, is somebody who, and a person who's lived in this country all their lives and found themselves homeless, do you think that the government prioritizes them or the illegal migrants?
Illegal migrants.
Really?
Oh, in California, absolutely. We have plenty of people that are going homeless or they're working unhoused. There's Up here in Northern California, we have a very large spread of affluence. So in my district, which starts at the Golden Gate Bridge, you have a very highly affluent area in Marin County. I think it's the fifth wealthiest in the nation. And if you make $103,000 or less in Marin County, you qualify for Section 8. Now,
103,000?
you qualify for Section 8, yes. Now, good luck getting it, but you qualify. So you can make six figures and still be considered working poor in Marin County.
That's a lot of money, 103,000.
It used to be a lot of money. There was a time when it was actually $103,000, but
Right.
sadly, inflation has changed the purchasing power of our dollar, and it's just not what it used to be. And so on the other side of our district, at the very northern end, the average annual salary in, say, Trinity County is $17,000 a year. So we have a very significant spread on the socioeconomic level.
Mhm.
And we watch many people and know of people who are either leaving because they can no longer afford to live here and there are not sufficient services that will address their needs. So they vote with their feet and they leave. But there are plenty of services that are showing up here, particularly in Sonoma County, that are directed specifically at those that are undocumented, whatever term you want to use, those that are not citizens that are residing here in California have far more services, and we're watching not only at the state level but also at the county levels a greater allocation of taxpayer funds towards services that provide benefits specifically to illegal immigrants, while the rest of us are doing our best to afford the ever increasing cost of food. And so we're watching a very disproportionate attention given to those that have just shown up here that are very likely to be quote unquote Democrat voters. And then those that have been here who have created industry, who have supported economic activities and wealth growth, job growth, et cetera. And those are leaving. I think the number one group that is leaving California over the last 2+ years are those that make $200,000 or more. So that is the group that is exiting California, are the educated, skilled, and above average paid individuals, and they're taking that and they're going to Idaho and Texas, Florida, and so on. And a lot of it is because of the way that California has structured its support services. I don't know what more to say on that one. It's happening. We can see it. Some people are happy about it, but most, I believe, are unhappy about it as the economic condition of the United States and California continues to deteriorate.
What made you decide to run for Congress?
I am of the, I guess, ilk, if you will, that you should always leave something better than you found it.
Okay.
And I do not believe that this country, this state, this region, this county is in a better condition than when I was born. I believe that we have created a scenario where the next generation is going to have less opportunity. They're going to have less access to wealth. I think the conditions in which we are creating for following generations is a tragedy. And I had to get involved and do my part to try and turn it around and make it better, because that is part of our duty as citizens. We owe the future generations what past generations gave us. And I think one of the very defining elements that pushed me to step forward was that our current representative is trying to get rid of our water storage facilities. And so I take issue with that.
Water is a big problem in California, is it not?
Very much so. I mean, we have not built a water storage facility, a major dam or a storage facility in 40 years, but our population has increased exponentially over the last 40 years.
Now, is California a red or a blue state?
It's People will like to say that it's a blue state, and that's because of San Francisco, Bay Area, and Los Angeles. But the rest of California is either deeply red or somewhat purple. So there's a lot of purple on this coast. But as you get closer to the epicenter of San Francisco, it gets bluer and bluer.
So basically, when an illegal migrant comes into this country, whereabout in California are they settling?
I think it's everywhere. But I would argue that overwhelmingly it's in the southern half. So they can show up and go into Los Angeles, be well taken care of. You know, there are hotels that luxury hotels, high quality hotels that are housing illegal immigrants at the cost of the taxpayer. And so they have food, housing, and spending money supplied by us, the state of California, to be here. Whereas I am required to pay for all of my own things, plus pay the taxes, which then allow the state of California to then hand these services and goods to these new arrivals.
When you say spending money, how much are you talking about?
It depends on the municipalities, and I've heard anywhere from $500 to $1,200 depending a month, depending on where they are.
Okay.
I know in San Francisco, if you, I mean, they don't check your citizenship. So if you go into San Francisco and you tell them that you're homeless, I know that homeless people in San Francisco get paid $1,100 a month. Plus, they have a free cell phone. Plus, they're allowed to stay in hotels, and that's all paid for by us.
So when people come into this country and they apply for a driver's license, are they automatically registered to vote even though they're not citizens?
It's my understanding that they're not automatically registered, but that there is no paperwork necessary to prove their residency for voting. And this has become, and I want to caveat that I have not been there in these spaces when it happens, but right now the way that the information has been presented, there are very easy ways for anybody to become registered as a voter. And I know that for a time, there was an automatic registration process at the DMV until it was pointed out by election integrity groups here in California. And the DMV and the Secretary of State said this was a mistake. I think it was maybe a total of 1,700 people were inappropriately registered to vote here. And that was because the system was automatically taking that process to the registration sequence.
Is this the first time you've ever run for public office?
It's the first seat I've run for. I ran for the same exact seat in the 22 cycle, but I worked on a lot of campaigns over the last 20 years and have a fair amount of experience in campaigning and politics, policy analysis, and so on. So it's not entirely new to me, but not necessarily the campaign, the formal campaign.
Do you find that politics has changed since you've been involved?
Well, yes, I do. When I first started, I felt like there was far more decorum. I felt there was a greater alignment between, we'll call it opposing sides. I very regularly, when I was in my 20s, and this is say mid 2000s, I could very often see Democrats and Republicans talking together, getting along together, and all was well. And it seems as time has gone on, that divide between the left and the right and conservative and liberal has become greater. The gap is just expanding, and it's becoming far more and far too divisive at this point. And I think it's really impacting the quality of our discourse, not only politically but as a nation. I think we have seen a great deal of devolvement in our political sphere over the last at least 20 years.
That's too bad.
It's a sad sight to see. It is.
Right. So, are you are you enjoying running for office?
No, not at all.
You don't. So
No,
you think it's a duty for you as a citizen to do this?
I do. This is my country. And I have sworn an oath to the Constitution 3 times and said that I will protect this Constitution with my life. And for that, if this is the mechanism where I'm able to do that, then so be it.
So when you go around and you speak to the people in your district, do they think that the migrant crisis is like in the top five that they're concerned about?
Yes, I think it's definitely top 5, and I think it's the migrant crisis, but it's also representing national security. So there's a couple of issues or concerns, I think, tucked all in under one banner, but the immigration practice or our immigration policies, the drug flow into the country, the drug epidemic that's happening, much of I think, disruptions in our economy, the way in which our government is handling it, and even incentivizing it. I think these are all things that contribute to putting that issue in the top 5 for at least California voters.
Wow.
And one of the things that I want to make sure that I add into this conversation is, when we do not have anybody that's checking the borders, we also have people that are bringing lots of weapons in to the United States. And I think that doesn't really get discussed a lot. But you think everybody that's going to listen to this or most people that are going to listen to this, they have a home. That home has walls. That home has a door. Usually that door is locked, and oftentimes there's a weapon to protect that home and the people within it. Why would we not do that at our own border? And why would we make sure that we don't have people that are coming in here bringing weapons? And if you don't think that the cartels have military grade equipment and weaponry, then I would suggest you do some research. But the other concern that I think a lot of people have is that the cartels and organized crime are operating effectively with impunity. And so they can bring their weapons in, commit their crimes, and then return. And the other issue that a lot of people I don't know have really connected yet is that to get into the United States, many of those that are coming here are paying the cartels. So this is a huge revenue stream for the cartels. But the other issue that many of these, I think many of them are immigrants. And I think what ends up happening to a lot of them is that they get brought across the border and then they land right back in the hands of the cartel that they were trying to escape when they left their country of origin. And so we no longer present necessarily a first world opportunity for those that are trying to come here. And it's not something that I think is being addressed. We can get into, say, what's happening with the children, how there's 320,000 320,000 missing children that are known. And we have to remember that all the numbers that we talk about that are coming into this country, 2 million people coming across in 23 and 1.7 in 2022, those are contacts. That's not actual count. That's just how many encounters we have, not how many came across. That's how many people we interfaced with and then let go in. How many came in that we never knew about? So what's the real number? We don't know. And that's a problem.
So you would say that the crisis of missing children is quite high?
I don't think that that's top of mind right now. I think it's one of those that's going to become more prolific. But I think right now there's so much misinformation and obfuscation happening that people are having difficulty really getting into the information. Just, I mean, you think about just how many stories are flowing all over the place, and everybody's trying to figure out what's real and what's not real, and it becomes very difficult to latch on to data. So I don't know I think once most Americans become aware of this and really cement this concern into their mind, I think we will see a very different approach from the United States to protect these children. And it's shocking to me that number is so large, and there's not been anything done about it.
And if a child is missing, nobody knows their whereabouts.
That's Yeah, that's part of the issue. That no one, once they come in and they're passed on, oftentimes they're handed to right back to the cartels. Um, I don't remember which media outlet it was. I think James O'Keefe was involved in it in a way, or he was involved in the topic, but there was a whistleblower that came from Health and Human Services at the federal level. And she was a whistleblower saying that that Health and Human Services was well aware that they were taking children who were unaccompanied minors, and they were giving them to people who were known um, child molesters or undocumented people. And they found that these children were being sent to some of the same houses. Sometimes one house would have between 10 and 15 undocumented or unaccompanied minors there. And so you have a bunch of young girls that are under the age of 18 that are living with several adult males who are also undocumented. And so there's no tracking, there's no ability for us to identify who these entities are. Are they safe? Is this the appropriate place for these children to be? And then they often go missing. And it's getting pretty bad.
I don't think people really comprehend the situation that you just talked about. You know,
Yeah.
I'm in New York, and what you're telling me, everything you're telling me is like a revelation I never knew before. No, I'm serious.
Okay. Well, yeah, sadly, I think that America lives in at least three different algorithms. There's the left algorithm, the right algorithm, and then the nonpartisan algorithm. And I think depending on where you are on the spectrum is driving the information that you're getting. Uh, and it's sad that there's so much control over the information that we have, because there's certainly things that you know about that I don't know about.
Mhm.
And I think that's a problem, because we're not all working with the same data set. And so that is allowing, or that is causing us to arrive at different conclusions. And so if we can't all operate on a shared picture, then it's much more difficult for us to create solutions together.
So there's like 47 days until the election,
Oh, yeah.
and this problem might get a lot bigger if it's not dealt with properly. How how devastating to this country and to the people involved will this ultimately be?
If this continues unchecked, I believe, and there's a lot of studies that show that this is the case. But if this goes on unchecked, then the outcome is that the system becomes so overburdened that it is incapable of providing services to anyone. Uh, it's very difficult to turn the ship of government. It's a very massive ship with a lot of captains and a lot of steering wheels, and it it is not difficult, or excuse me, it is not easy to make adjustments. That said, this is also a national security issue, and I believe that if we don't create some form of process, that we won't really see the end of the in-migration to the United States. And one of the things that I see happening right now, particularly from the left, is these programs that they talk about that are further incentivizing greater immigration into the United States. Because one of the things that I don't know many citizens of the US think about is that once someone comes here from another country, that doesn't mean that they no longer have connections to their country of origin or their family that's still there or their friends that are still there. And so when person A comes to California or Illinois or New York and they're put up in a hotel and they have guaranteed food and they have money for doing nothing, they tell their friends back home and it turns into its own marketing campaign. So if you have a piece of legislation like we just saw in California, which again got vetoed, and the only reason it was vetoed was because Gavin said that there wasn't enough money in the program. Not that it was a bad idea, just that there was no money because we're in a significant deficit here in California. But once person A goes to California and sees all of the services that they receive, they tell their friends back home, which then incentivizes the individuals back home and is basically a confirmation to them that yes, indeed, if I go there, all is well. I have no risks. I have no worries about, setting up a life there. And that's okay. I want people to believe that they can set up a life here when they come here, but I want them to believe that because our economy is doing so well, not because our government forcibly took money from one group of people and is giving it to another group of people. I want them to come here, as many have for the last 400 years, but we'll say 250 years. I want them to come here because there is great opportunity for all. And as a republic, we need to grow. We need to expand. That's part of the principle of a republic is perpetual growth. And you want to make sure that you have the best of the best. And that's what a healthy economy does, is it helps determine who's the best at what. And there's nobody, if you are here to provide benefit to this nation, please come, please stay, please make a home here. I think that's what everybody, Republican, Democrat, that's what everybody wants. And it's just, we've got to do it in a cogent way. Otherwise, we'll destroy the system.
Do you believe that the two major parties on the presidential level is addressing this issue properly?
I think there's more effort on the Republican side to address what I think needs to be done as far as protecting the border and but not necessarily creating a cogent intake process. I think both parties are making a lot of hay out of the border issue, and that many in both parties are not interested in solving the border problem. I think, sorry, go ahead.
Why do you think they're not interested in solving the problem?
It's one more talking point. I mean, how much money do you think the Republican Party has raised off of immigration as a topic? How much money? A lot. And how much money do you think the Democratic Party has raised off of immigration as a topic? A lot. So why would they get rid of that cash cow? And I'm talking about non-presidential, so I should adjust my statement to actually answer your question. But from everything that what Trump has said that he wants to do, I think he is at least telling the American people that he hears their concerns. I am not entirely clear how you deport tens of millions of people. I'll wait to hear more from him on that plan, but I think there's a better way. I think a way for us to take our situation and make it better is to make sure that we are creating an economy, we are creating jobs, we are creating and making sure that we are doing what it is that the American promise is, and that's to create opportunity for all. And again, it has to be in a planned and orderly way. It cannot be wide open. And that's what I hear from Kamala Harris is let it flow.
So, Chris, give out your contact information if somebody wants to contact you.
Please.
Volunteer for your campaign.
Okay. You can find anything you need about my positions on my website, which is christocongress.com, christocongress.com. And then I'm on social media on all major platforms at